October 31st, 1589, the city of Cologne. A crowd gathers in the town square. People haven't come for a celebration. They've come to watch an execution, but what they are about to see will make them wake up in a cold sweat for the rest of their lives. On the scaffold stands Peter Stumpp, a wealthy farmer, a respected neighbor. But the judge has just read out the list of his crimes, and it's not cattle theft. Stumpp confessed that over 25 years, he killed and ate 14 children and 2 pregnant women, along with their fetuses. But that's not the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part is how he did it. Peter Stumpp told the court that the devil gave him a magic belt. When he put it on, he transformed into a huge, bloodthirsty wolf. The court didn't send him to a madhouse. The court believed him. He wasn't executed as a man. He was executed as a monster. His bones were broken, his head was chopped off and impaled on a pike next to the figure of a wolf. Stop. You think this is a Brothers Grimm fairy tale? No, this is a real court record from the 16th century. We're used to thinking of werewolves as guys from Twilight or furry puppets from 80s Hollywood horror movies. But for our ancestors, lycanthropy wasn't a myth. It was a diagnosis. It was a legal verdict. In France alone, 30,000 werewolf trials took place. 30,000 people were burned or hanged because their neighbors saw them growing fangs. What was it? Mass hallucination? An unknown virus? Or maybe we just found a convenient excuse for the beastly cruelty that lives inside us? Today, we won't be looking for magic. We'll be looking for evidence: medicine, biology, chemistry, and psychosis. How could breakfast bread turn an entire village into a pack of wolves? And why might your brain decide right now that you are an animal? To understand the root of this nightmare, or should I say the paw print, we need to rewind the clock way back. The first mentions of wolfmen are older than the Bible. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest stories. The goddess Ishtar turns her ex-lovers into wolves. A classic move. Refuse to put a ring on it and you're running on all fours. But the ancient Greeks created the real werewolf brand. Meet King Lycaon, a guy with a very specific sense of humor. He decided to test if Zeus was truly all-seeing, so he served him the meat of his own son for lunch. Zeus didn't appreciate the prank. He flipped the table and turned Lycaon into a wolf. It is from here, from the name Lycaon, that the term lycanthropy originated. In antiquity, this was divine punishment. You screwed up. You became a wolf. Simple as that. But in the Middle Ages, the rules of the game changed. The church said, the gods have nothing to do with it. This is all the devil. A real epidemic begins. Witch hunts? Please, that's so mainstream. The real trend of the 1520 to 1630 season in France was the werewolf hunt. People genuinely believed that a werewolf was a sorcerer who made a deal with Satan, got a pelt as a gift, and went out at night to devour sheep or neighbors. The peak of this hysteria was a case that still blows the minds of cryptozoologists today. 1764. Gévaudan. A massive beast terrorized the province for 3 years, over 100 victims, all with their throats torn out. Witnesses swore, "This is no wolf. It's bigger, smarter, it doesn't fear bullets, and it escapes every trap." King Louis XV personally sent his best troops there. Can you imagine? A king sending an army to fight an animal? Eventually, the beast was killed. But even when the carcass was brought to court, no one could figure out what it was. A giant wolf? A hyena escaped from a circus? Or a maniac in a costume training attack dogs? But here's the million-dollar question. Why exactly then? Why did thousands of people suddenly start seeing wolves where there weren't any? Why did judges, doctors, and priests all insist in unison, yes, this guy is a beast? To answer that, we need to stop flipping through myths and open a textbook on dermatology. Okay, so the church blamed the devil, the peasants blamed witchcraft. But let's play the ultimate devil's advocate. What if those medieval villagers weren't entirely crazy? What if they actually saw people who looked exactly like the beasts in their nightmares? Because the truth is, the blueprint for a monster is already hiding inside us. It's written in our DNA. Meet Petrus Gonsalves, born in the Canary Islands in 1537. He wasn't a myth, he was a nobleman. But to the 16th century world, he was a walking, breathing anomaly. He had a condition called congenital hypertrichosis terminalis, often dubbed Ambras syndrome. It's an insanely rare genetic mutation. Normally, your DNA sends a localized signal. Grow hair here on the scalp, maybe a beard, some eyebrows. But with hypertrichosis, that genetic off switch is broken. The body produces terminal hair, thick, dark, long hair everywhere. Eyelids, forehead, cheeks. Petrus was brought to France as a curiosity for King Henry II. The king treated him like a science experiment. He wanted to see if a wild man could be tamed. So he gave Petrus the best education possible. Petrus mastered Latin, studied the classics, and married a beautiful Parisian woman named Catherine. Yes, historians believe this exact marriage is the real historical basis for Beauty and the Beast. But here is where the hypertrichosis theory completely fails our werewolf investigation. Look at Petrus. He wasn't hunted with pitchforks. He was a celebrity. He attended royal banquets. Why? Because he was polite. He was civilized. He didn't howl, and he certainly didn't eat anyone. Excessive hair alone doesn't make a monster. To get a monster, you need something that makes people recoil in sheer terror. You need porphyria, cutaneous porphyria. It's a rare group of blood disorders where your body fails to produce heme, a vital part of hemoglobin. Instead, chemicals called porphyrins build up in your skin. And when those chemicals are exposed to sunlight, they react violently. If you have severe porphyria, the sun literally burns you. Your skin blisters, scars, and tightens. As the skin around the mouth shrinks and tightens, it pulls back, exposing the teeth and gums, making human teeth look massive, like fangs. Add in the fact that porphyria can turn your urine a dark, reddish purple, making it look like you've been drinking blood, and that to avoid the agonizing pain of the sun, you only leave your house at night. Imagine you are a superstitious 16th century judge. A guy is dragged into your court. He only comes out at night. His skin is scarred, his teeth look like fangs, and his urine looks like blood. You don't prescribe him beta-carotene. You call the executioner. But there's a fatal flaw in this theory too. Porphyria explains the look, but it doesn't explain the rage. Werewolves in the lore aren't just ugly, sickly people hiding in the dark. They are apex predators. They are fast, they are furious, and they infect you with a bite. To find that, we have to leave the genetics lab and track down a killer. The winter of 1450. Paris. The 100 Years' War has devastated the countryside. People are starving. But they aren't the only ones. Driven mad by hunger and the freezing cold, a pack of wolves breaches the city walls of Paris, led by a massive red-furred wolf the terrified locals named Cortot, Bobtail. The pack slaughters 40 people right in the streets of the capital. They are eventually cornered and speared to death on the steps of Notre Dame. But the psychological trauma? It scars Europe forever. The wolf becomes the ultimate symbol of unpredictable, savage death. Now, combine that primal fear of wolves with this, the rabies virus. If you want to understand where the werewolf curse comes from, look at how this microscopic assassin operates. It is literally biological witchcraft. A rabid wolf bites you, but you don't turn into a monster immediately. The virus is stealthy. It enters your peripheral nerves and begins a slow, agonizing climb up your spinal cord, moving at about 12 to 24 millimeters a day. This is the incubation period. For weeks or even months, you are completely fine. The bite heals. You forget about it. But then, it hits your brain. Specifically, the limbic system, the part of your brain that controls emotions. It destroys your inhibition. It destroys your fear. It replaces it with pure, unadulterated aggression. You become a rage machine. But the virus isn't just making you angry. It has a master plan. It needs to spread, and it spreads through saliva. Think about the werewolf legends, the myth. The beast violently foams at the mouth. The science. The rabies virus paralyzes your throat muscles. It physically prevents you from swallowing, so your mouth fills with highly infectious saliva. The myth, the werewolf is repelled by holy water. The science, it's called hydrophobia. Because the virus wants to stay in your mouth to be transmitted via a bite, it tricks your brain. The The mere sight or sound of water triggers agonizing, terrifying spasms in your throat. The victim violently panics at the sight of water. The myth. The curse is passed by a bite. The science. If your neighbor was bitten by a wolf 2 months ago, and today he is tearing at his clothes, howling in pain, terrified of water, and trying to bite his own family. To a medieval peasant, that man didn't just catch a bug, he was transforming. The spirit of the rabid wolf that bit him was taking over his body. Rabies is the werewolf curse. We have the look, we have the rage, we have the bite. Case closed, right? Wrong, because rabies and genetics don't explain why, in the 16th century, entire villages were suddenly seeing werewolves everywhere. They don't explain why people who were never bitten suddenly confessed to eating children. To solve that, we have to look in the pantry at a fungus that accidentally invented LSD. We've looked at the genetics of hair growth. We've tracked the rabies virus through the nervous system, but none of that explains the scale. Rabies is rare. Hypertrichosis is 1 in a billion. But the werewolf trials of the 16th and 17th centuries weren't about 1 or 2 isolated freaks. In 1598, in the Jura region of France, an entire village testified that they saw a family transform into wolves and dance in the moonlight. How do you explain mass hallucination? How does a whole town lose its mind at the exact same time? The answer has been sitting on the dinner table the whole time. This is sékel céréales, rye. For centuries, it was the staple food of the European poor. But if the spring is wet and the summer is cool, conditions that were common during the Little Ice Age, a specific parasite infects the crop. It's a fungus called Claviceps purpurea. You might know it by its common name, ergot. When a baker throws this infected grain into the oven, he isn't just baking bread. He is essentially cooking up a batch of biological chemical weapons. Here is the chemistry that will blow your mind. Ergot contains a cocktail of alkaloids. One of the most potent is ergotamine. In 1938, a Swiss chemist named Albert Hofmann was studying these exact chemicals when he accidentally synthesized a derivative called LSD-25. That's right. The werewolf panic was likely a massive accidental bad acid trip. The condition is called ergotism. In the Middle Ages, they called it St. Anthony's fire, and the symptoms read like a horror movie script. Phase 1. Convulsions, violent muscle spasms that twist the body into unnatural shapes, making a person look like they are transforming. Phase 2. Gangrene. The chemicals constrict blood flow to the extremities. Your fingers and toes turn black, die, and sometimes fall off. To a superstitious peasant, a blackened, curled hand looks a lot like a wolf's paw. Phase 3. Hallucinations. And not just seeing colors. We are talking about shared delusions. When you are starving, terrified, and poisoned with a psychoactive fungus, your brain projects your deepest fears onto reality. You look at your neighbor, and his face melts. His teeth elongate. You don't just think he's a wolf. You see the fur. You hear the growl. This isn't just speculation. Historians have overlaid the maps. The regions with the highest number of werewolf executions, like the Rhine Valley in rural France, are the exact same regions that relied heavily on rye bread and suffered from wet, damp climates. When the bread went bad, the wolves came out. We weren't hunting monsters. We were hunting the symptoms of food poisoning. But we can't blame everything on bread. Ergotism died out with modern agriculture. Rabies is treatable. So the werewolf should be extinct, right? Wrong, because the beast doesn't live in the forest. It lives in the parietal lobe of your brain. Welcome to the world of clinical lycanthropy. This is a rare but very real psychiatric syndrome. It is a type of delusional misidentification syndrome. Patients with this condition believe, with 100% certainty, that they are transforming into animals. To understand this, you need to know about proprioception and the body schema. Close your eyes, touch your nose. You can do that because your brain has a constant, real-time 3D map of your body. It knows where your hands are, how big your mouth is, how long your legs are. But what happens if that map glitches? In clinical lycanthropy, the neural pathways in the somatosensory cortex misfire. The patient literally feels their physical shape changing. They feel their mouth extending into a muzzle. They feel the sensation of fur pushing through their skin. They look in the mirror and see a human, but their brain tells them that reflection is a lie. I am a wolf. In 1852, a patient in Nancy, France, was admitted to an asylum. He demanded raw meat. He walked on all fours. He attacked the nurses with his teeth because he claimed his claws hadn't grown in yet. A study in 2004 from Harvard's McLean Hospital detailed cases where patients would howl at the moon, not for ritual, but because the sound felt correct for their new vocal cords. This is the scariest part of the investigation. We think of our humanity as something solid, something permanent. But clinical lycanthropy proves that being human is just a fragile construct in your brain. Flip a few switches in the parietal cortex and you stop being a civilized person. You become a predator. The werewolf isn't an invader, it's a backup operating system, and sometimes it reboots without your permission. So if the reality is rabies, porphyria, LSD, and brain damage, where did we get the silver bullets? Almost everything you know about werewolves is a lie invented by one man. His name was Kurt Siodmak. Siodmak was a Jewish refugee who fled Nazi Germany for Hollywood. He was writing the script for the 1941 movie The Wolf Man. He needed to make the monster tragic. He needed rules. Folklore says, you kill a werewolf by cutting off its head or burning it. Siodmak wrote, only silver can kill it, a metaphor for purity versus evil. Folklore says, werewolves transform whenever they want or by using a magic belt. Siodmak wrote, even a man who is pure in heart may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. The full moon link? That was barely in the mythology. Siodmak made it canon. He took a chaotic, terrifying reality, the fear of madness and disease, and turned it into a structured game with rules. Why? Because rules make us feel safe. If the werewolf is just a guy with a disease, that's terrifying. If the werewolf is a monster that follows the lunar cycle and hates silver, that's a story we can control. So, where does that leave us? We started with a wheel of torture in Cologne. We tracked a virus through the nervous system. We blamed a fungus on rye bread. And we ended up inside the parietal lobe of the human brain. But here's the final question. Why does the werewolf myth survive? Why do we keep telling this story for 4,000 years? Because other monsters are foreign. The vampire is a corpse. The alien is from space. The zombie is a mindless drone. But the werewolf? The werewolf is us. It represents the oldest fear of humanity, the fear of losing control. The fear that our civilization, our suits, our laws, our politeness is just a thin veneer. We don't need a full moon to see the beast anymore. We see it when someone snaps in road rage. We see it in the brutality of war. We see it when a normal person suddenly does something so violent, so inhuman, that we say they turned into an animal. The werewolf isn't a warning about wolves. It's a warning about ourselves. It reminds us that we are all just one bad day, one bad gene, or one bad chemical reaction away from the forest. So, tonight, when you brush your teeth, take the mirror test, look into your own eyes, and ask yourself, is the reflection holding the beast back? Or is it just waiting for the moon to rise? Thanks for watching. Sleep tight and stay human wrong. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments which fact from this video was the most unexpected.